You know that saying, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain? Well, this is basically that story, but for an entire dynasty. We're talking about the Hasmoneans. They started out as these incredible rebels who freed a nation, only to end up being the ones who tore it apart from the inside. So let's trace the steps of how a righteous fight for freedom completely curdled into a raw thirst for power.
This is really the big question we're tackling here. The story of the Hasmoneans is just this timeless and, frankly, tragic cautionary tale about what can happen when the pursuit of power completely overtakes the principles you once fought and died for. Okay, so our story really kicks off in 1601 BC. The famous rebel leader, Judas Maccabeus, is dead. His brother, Jonathan, steps up and takes command of the rebellion. He sets up this sort of government in exile that turns out to be incredibly popular with the people. But his real big-time rise to power comes from a move that was, both politically brilliant and deeply, deeply controversial.
Now, to get just how radical this next step was, we got to talk about the Zadokite priesthood. For centuries, since the time of King Solomon, the high priest had to come from this one specific family line, the descendants of Zadok. It was a sacred, unbroken tradition. End of story.
And then this happens. A Syrian king who is desperate for allies in his own civil war just straight up appoints Jonathan, a rebel commander who is absolutely not from the Zadokite line, as the high priest. It's a complete shatterpoint for tradition. It's this moment where political convenience just bulldozes centuries of religious law. And just like that, Jonathan had a ton of power. He wasn't just the high priest, nope. The Syrians also made him the military governor, or strategos. So he held both the top religious and military jobs at the same time. He used this power to expand Judea's territory, becoming a major player in the region, at least until Syrian politics shifted again, and he was lured into a trap and executed. So with Jonathan dead, his last surviving brother, Simon, takes over. And Simon is the one who's going to finally achieve the rebellion's ultimate goal. We're not just talking about autonomy anymore, but true sovereign independence. And he does it with a single, brilliant diplomatic move.
Simon sees another Syrian civil war brewing and sees his opportunity. He offers his support to one of the rivals, a guy named Demetrius II, but with one very bold condition: exempt Jerusalem from all foreign taxes. Now, this was not a small request. In the ancient world, if you weren't paying taxes to an empire, it meant you weren't part of that empire.
And guess what? Demetrius agreed. This was the moment. The books of Maccabees declare that the yoke of the Gentiles had finally been removed. For the first time in centuries, the Jewish nation was effectively independent. This is it. This is the absolute high point of the entire Hasmonean story. In 140 BC, a great assembly in Jerusalem makes it official. Simon is recognized as both the high priest and the political leader. He'd achieved the success his brothers died for. But even here, at the absolute peak, the dynasty was just haunted by treachery. Only 5 years later, Simon was murdered at a banquet by his own ambitious son-in-law. After that assassination, Simon's son, John Hyrcanus, takes control. And his reign is the great turning point. The kingdom is going to see massive success under his rule, for sure, but it comes at a steep, steep moral cost. This is where the mission really starts to go sour. Hyrcanus achieved incredible things, but his methods marked a really dark turn. His treasury was empty, so he reportedly plundered the tomb of King David for its legendary riches. He used that money to hire foreign mercenaries, guys who fought for coin, not for their country. He then went on this campaign of conquest, destroying the sacred temple of the Samaritans and, get this, forcing the entire nation of Idumea to convert to Judaism at the point of a sword. And right here, this reveals the profound, tragic irony at the very heart of the Hasmonean story. The entire Maccabean revolt started as a fight against a Greek king who tried to force the Jews to abandon their religion. And now, just one generation later, a Hasmonean leader is doing the exact same thing to other people. The liberators had become the persecutors. After John Hyrcanus, what started as a moral compromise just spirals down into outright tyranny. The next generation of Hasmonean rulers were paranoid, murderous, and breathtakingly brutal, both to their enemies and, well, to their own families. So, Take Hyrcanus' son, Aristobulus I. In a reign that lasted only 1 year, he declares himself king, a title no Hasmonean had dared to use before. He immediately imprisons his own mother and his brothers to secure his throne, and then lets his mother starve to death. Then, court intrigue tricks him into killing the one brother he actually liked, an act that drove him to so much grief that he apparently drank himself to death. Next up is his brother Alexander Jannaeus, one of the guys freed from prison. And militarily, he was a massive success. He expanded the Hasmonean kingdom to its largest extent ever, even rivaling the biblical kingdom of Solomon. But all the success was masking a level of cruelty that was just truly monstrous. This number, it says it all, 800. After a faction of his own people, the Pharisees, rose up against him, Jannaeus crushed their rebellion. He then rounded up 800 of their leaders and had every single one of them crucified in Jerusalem. And, according to the historian Josephus, as these men were dying, the high priest and king feasted with his concubines, forcing the men to watch as their own families were slaughtered right before their eyes. After Jannaeus also drank himself to death, the kingdom got this brief 9-year break, a little bit of peace and stability under his wife, Queen Alexandra Salome. But it was really just the calm before the final storm, a storm that the Hasmoneans would bring entirely on themselves. Alexandra was actually a surprisingly popular and effective ruler. She completely reversed her husband's brutal policies, she made peace with the Pharisees, and she presided over a period of real stability. But when she died, her legacy of peace died right along with her. Everything fell apart because of her 2 sons. In the end, it wasn't some foreign empire that destroyed the kingdom. It was family ambition. She had named the elder son, Hyrcanus II, as her successor. But the younger son, Aristobulus II, who was a far more ambitious general, wanted the crown for himself. So he seized the throne, and the 2 brothers plunged their independent nation into a devastating civil war. And this was the Hasmoneans' final legacy. A century after winning their freedom, their descendants destroyed it from within. And this leaves us with one final, pretty ominous question. When a kingdom is this busy tearing itself apart, who do you think is waiting in the wings to come and pick up the pieces?